Replacing the state with crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a finance mechanism that allows a group of people to voluntarily finance a project, activity, or product. The arrangement is based on an explicit binding contract between funder and fundee outlining what can be expected from the fundee, how much compensation they are requesting, and the approximate date of completion for the program, among other things. To date, crowdfunding has been used to finance music albums, tours, space telescopes, gadgets and doodads, community projects, and even microfinance in the developing world. Perhaps the most exciting optional feature of crowdfunding is when the end product is made freely available to the public. It is here that crowdfunding becomes a truly transformative financing model, effectively eliminating the economic concept of the free rider problem. This is not to say there will no longer be free riders, but that it is just no longer a problem. For items that are infinitely reproducible, like digital music or movies, this seems obvious. If an artist can get paid in advance for his work in return for unrestricted access to the product, the end result is everyone is happy. The artist has been paid what he thinks his work is worth, and now everyone has access to his work. So how can we relate this concept to public services? First, let's look at the current system. Normally, public services are administered through a government bureaucracy, directed by elected officials, and funded through involuntary taxation. This process has worked okay up to now if you're willing to accept the violent and coercive relationship between the state and the individual. That philosophical for some debate aside, the current system also leaves much to be desired. Given advances in communicative technology, there's some serious structural deficiencies in the system. Because elected officials act as a conduit to the will of their constituents, many voices are ultimately not heard. Elected representatives supposedly do their best to understand the needs of their constituency by attending town hall meetings, receiving mail and emails, responding to public opinion polls, and entertaining lobbyists representing factions of their constituency. This process for developing what is the wants of the people effectively creates a divisive battlefield where the stakeholders attempt to drown out their competitors' voices. Such a system is ripe for corruption and abuse. The taxpayer has a tremendously small say in the matter and must continue to pay their taxes regardless if they agree on what is being funded. They have almost no incentive to become informed about how their tax dollars are spent, as they can do very little to change the outcome. Let's compare this to one possible manifestation of a crowd-funded public sector. In this system, the individual taxpayer, or perhaps even voluntary contributor, is the focal point of action. Unlike the current state-run system, it will ultimately be the decision of each individual what services they find worthwhile in funding. As a result, multiple different parties will vie for each individual's funding and/or support. This will include input from elected officials, lobbyists, the agencies and departments themselves, as well as from the media, friends, and family. Each individual will have to make a benefit analysis for each public dollar they spend. As this will be a fluid process, individuals will need to react to where there is a most pressing need or where they feel there is underfunding. While one person is not likely to finance every program or agency available, having each individual financing the programs they deem important results in a situation where everyone is able to benefit from the funded public programs. Some things to briefly consider. There is no reason in such a system a person cannot designate someone else to allocate their public funds. If a person did not allocate their public dollars in a timely manner, their designee or elected representative can allocate for them, and in most situations it will likely be elected representatives determining what is eligible for public financing. As perhaps you can see, there are a number of improvements over the current state-run system. Control over the most critical piece of the political system, spending, becomes decentralized. The resulting system is less prone to corruption, empowers the individual, and promotes greater levels of transparency, ownership, and accountability into government. Notably, in such a system, it would be impossible for there to be a budget deficit. For those that have already pondered the stateless society and buy into the concept of polycentric law and all that goes along with it, I'd like to point out how crowdfunding is better suited for a seamless transition from state to post-state. I think in many ways, crowdfunding services that have been typically considered public will make the transition more palatable to the masses. Let's take the example of the police or private defense company. The number one concern that you hear for those that consider a privatized police force is what happens to those that are too poor to afford protection. The concept for justice for all is deeply ingrained into the social fabric of society, and rightfully so. While it may be true that lower cost options as well as charity could likely be provided, it seems more in line with current sentiment and prevailing values that a crowdfunded option could best quench this fear. The benefits of the subscription model, such as consumer choice, improved service, and accountability, can all be had via the crowdfunding financing mechanism. The only difference is the services rendered will not be exclusively for those that finance the service, as long as the budget of the agency is met. Alright, that's all for today. I hope you find this idea interesting and promising, and please feel free to leave comments and feedback, and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. Thanks.